Entresto is a pretty big medication. It just went generic. I tried 8 patients, 7 of them, the generic was not covered. The generic only was covered in 1 of those 8. It's been approved by the FDA. It's a valid generic, except the PBM decided they're only covering the brand. The brand is about $650-ish. The generic, our cost was about $80 for the bottle.
This is Generation Health. We bring you the latest news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices helping you live a longer, healthier life. With me, Dante DiMatteo, PharmD. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Excellent. And to my right, Joey DiMatteo, PharmD, board-certified clinical nutritionist. How are you?
Doing good. How are you today?
I'm fantastic.
Yeah.
Writing mic number 4, Josiah Schweinberg, engineer extraordinaire. How are you?
Doing well.
Excellent, excellent.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm focused. I'm feeling centered. Anyway, so let's talk about a bunch of things. This is, so for those who might be new, who are just catching on, we are not a political show. We don't talk about politics. We all have political opinions. I don't know, Dante doesn't really have political opinions, but the rest of us have political opinions.
True.
But every once in a while...
Apolitical.
Yes, yeah. Every once in a while, politics invades the world of health. And when that happens, we got to talk about it. So... the Trump administration has been making big waves trying to get pharmaceutical prices under control. Obviously, this has been a hot topic for a number of years now, with different presidents doing different things, trying to corral and control pharmaceutical prices. And it's a big topic. Obviously, it's an incredibly complex issue. And in doing research for this episode, I was reminded yet again of just how complex this issue is. But staying on topic, the 2 biggest actions that President Trump took were 2 executive orders. The first one implemented what he called most favored nation status for America with drug manufacturers. The idea being that, as we know, different countries pay different amounts for different pharmaceuticals. So what costs $100 here might cost $20 in the UK, and it might be $15 in France. The premise of this executive order was that these companies need to start giving America the same cheapest price that they give to whatever their most favored nation is. There were a couple of things that he put in there to try and help that to happen. One of them being he suggested that manufacturers should be allowed to sell direct to consumer so that they can get around what are called PBMs. And we'll get into that in just a second. The other big executive order was Medicare prescription price renegotiation for the particularly high-cost drugs. In this situation, think things like the GLP-1s, where they come out and they're very, very expensive on the front end, and as such, out of reach for most Americans. Okay, so let's start back at the top here. Most favored nation. Joey, what do we got going on with that? What does this mean, and what's he trying to do with this?
Yeah, so he sent a letter out to CEOs of many drug companies.
Yes.
So most favored nation, he would like to, for Medicaid, so the initial letter is that for Medicaid, each drug company's full portfolio of existing drugs match, basically. So at most favored nation, so America would be paying whatever the lowest is for every single Medicaid patient immediately. And then for Medicare, and for commercial, so basically for everybody else, any new drugs. So that's pretty big.
That is huge.
That would be massive. So there's a lot of, it's not anecdotal because it's true, but one-off examples. Oh, look, this drug is 10 times as expensive. And so I knew some of that, but I wanted to maybe get a little more of a broad approach and a broad information in terms of what this actually is. So there was a 2024 RAND study across all drugs, brand, generic, everything. U.S. prices 2.87 times as high as prices in the 33 countries that they analyzed. So
2.87 times.
Yes.
So almost 300%.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
America is 5% of the world's population, but generates 50% of the revenue of big pharma and 75% of the profit because our prices are higher. So we're obviously more profitable. So I think this is just a classic headliner. Like, my goodness, like, this is crazy. This is terrible. And I'm not saying it's okay. That's not where I'm going. I'm just saying the headline just makes so much sense that it's like, who wouldn't want that? So what I tried to look at is, again, a little more nuance into what's going on, how it happened,
Right.
and why we are where we are. And when you're dealing with the scale and size and all the different interests here, from patients through to the government and the insurances and everything in between, how complicated it gets to kind of put a lot of those cats back in the bag and fix things like this. Because you've got massive Fortune 500 companies, multiple of them involved in this, and governments.
Yeah, real quick. Anything we say in explaining all of this is only a percentage of the problem. There is no possible way in a relatively short podcast to cover all of the factors that are contributing to these excessively high prices. So if you go, but wait a minute, you didn't mention, yes, you're correct. We didn't mention that. And we'll do that on another episode. But that's a factor too, whatever you're thinking about. Okay, sorry, go back.
Yeah, so a few reasons for why we are where we are. In America, our system is fragmented. You've got Medicare, Medicaid, you have private insurance, okay? And the other countries, nationalized healthcare, they have one negotiator, one person for the entire country, one party negotiating these prices. We've got the fragmentation, okay? Then you throw in the insurances themselves, the PBMs, which are sometimes a part of the insurances, very different situation in terms of negotiating. Price controls. Americans, and I get it, we don't really like having the government tell private companies what to charge other people. So what started as something that's, just our philosophy, the way we live, the way we believe in terms of free market capitalism, starts to just get kind of out of control because medications used to cost a certain amount of a person's income, a certain amount of our GDP. Now that number is ballooning. So what starts as this is the way we do things has the potential to, over time, start to just get out of control. And it's hard to, again, put those cats back in the bag. So our government doesn't directly negotiate any of these prices, okay? Countries use what's called reference pricing systems. So it's just basically a maximum amount that they're going to pay. So they almost have parameters before the negotiation even starts. They have parameters about what they're going to pay. And I'm just throwing out numbers, but if it's a blood pressure drug, we're not ever paying more than 50. So you can make this new drug or whatever you want. We're paying 50. We pay 200 for this. We pay up to 5,000 for cancer, whatever the case may be.
Right.
So again, that's back to just Americans. We do not. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and the reason they can do that is because they are such massive markets, all of the UK, all of France can say, hey, this is what we're willing to pay. And if you want to sell us any of your other drugs, you got to sell us this one for this price too. Because we're not gonna do this piecemeal thing. So they can kind of strong arm these companies into accepting lower prices on certain things because they'll be able to make it up in other areas and also make it up in America.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that's a big factor, different countries have different patent laws and exclusivities. So in the US, again, being very capitalistic, free market driven, we have a little more aggressive patent laws that protect the ability of these companies to make money on their innovations, which again makes sense. And that's where we are and what the exact number should be and how problematic it is.
How long?
Yeah. And how do you compare a medication that's helping health versus something, a computer innovation? Those things are difficult to parse through. But again, that's where we are. Drug companies, again, I mean, kind of goes without saying, we all know that they do contribute a lot regarding research and development costs for these medications. Okay. And also, on the other side, they spend a lot on direct to consumer advertising and they can only do US is one of the few countries where you can do that. So I'm just, again, trying to look at the overall spend and overall cost.
So the most favored nation element of this, you're saying that, President Trump is directing Medicare, Medicaid to immediately, tell the drug companies, we will only pay whatever the lowest price you're charging anybody else is.
Yes.
And the reason, of course, he's doing Medicare and Medicaid is because those are government-run programs where he actually has executive authority over them. Obviously, he can't do that for health insurance, but Medicare and Medicaid, just like in the other countries, is enormous. That is a huge number of patients.
Yeah. And again, to me, it's just one of those things. If we're just kind of starting from scratch, does that make sense? And we want to be on par with other countries? Yes, but it's very difficult to kind of unwind these things, because you basically, when you start talking about the kind of figures and dollar amounts that we're talking about here, to all of a sudden say that the entirety of American Medicaid and Medicaid patients now, instead of, it be you profiting $500 on a drug, which is a ton, I'm just saying where we are, $500 on a drug, now you're profiting $125 across the board.
Right.
That changes, again, a big company that employs a lot of Americans, that changes their financial parameters so drastically that even if you believe in the core tenets of what he's trying to do,
right,
the ramifications are very severe.
Yes.
It's maybe something you could do over time or whatever. And those are some of the details. So again, I get the spirit and it makes sense, but I just think it's important to understand why we're where we are related to this. This is not like, Americans be getting pushed around forever. We have different laws. We have a different situation that has allowed for this to occur.
Okay, so you mentioned PBMs. That is a major element of this as well. I know a lot of folks like to point the fingers at PBMs. A PBM is the pharmacy benefits manager. And they're effectively companies that are created to help do the administrative task of negotiating in between the drug manufacturer, the insurance provider, and the pharmacy, like you guys, right? Is that accurate? And that in theory, they're the ones transferring money between parties and negotiating prices and making sure that supplies are provided. And that's kind of the idea of their role, or at least it was initially.
Yes.
Especially because we have such a complex health insurance environment in America, as opposed to other countries where it's just single payer.
There's wonderful diagrams online. I just searched PBM and I'm looking at all the
most basic, explanation is that a doctor's office or hospital gets a check directly from Blue Cross or from Cigna or from Aetna. We don't get checks as a pharmacy. Pharmacies don't get checks from Aetna and Blue Cross. They get checks from Express Scripts or CVS Caremark or Optum Rx, a PBM. So PBMs aren't charities. They're obviously, they're billing the insurance, and there's literally there are middlemen in the transaction regarding what, and typically in healthcare, is direct. So
yeah. So a patient comes into the pharmacy, they pay their copay, they pay their whatever, $20, you receive that money, but then you bill the PBM for the difference. The PBM pays you, the PBM then charges the insurance company, who then pays the PBM, right? And theoretically, they're getting a little tiny piece everywhere along, $1 transaction fee or something, and that is how they pay their bills. The reality is, especially as they've grown over the last few years, and we might make some people angry, but PBMs aren't watching this show, so we don't have to worry about it. There are 3 PBMs, you just named them, CVS Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum Rx, that account for between depending on who you ask, 80 to 90% of all pharmaceutical prescriptions written go through one of those 3. Optum Rx, Express Scripts, and CVS Caremark. Of course, CVS Caremark, as the name would imply, that is CVS Pharmacies, and it is also owned by Aetna. Express Scripts is owned by Cigna, and Optum Rx is owned by United Healthcare. So you have the 3 enormous health insurance companies who own 3 enormous PBMs that control most of the pharmaceuticals in the country. And over the last couple decades or whatever, they have come up with all sorts of creative ways to increase the amount of money they make off of every single prescription that's written. We don't have to go into all those today. The short version is they make a lot of money doing a lot of things that are kind of squirrely, especially when it comes to independent pharmacies, because they can cover the back end for their owned pharmacies. Like CVS owns their CVS Caremark, so it doesn't matter if they lose a little profit at the pharmacy because they make up for it in the PBM. That's not the case for independent pharmacies.
Yes. And back to kind of what we're talking about and how this is affected by PBMs, the vertical integration aspect, which, like Tyler explained, for example, CVS Health, Aetna, and CVS Caremark, the PBM, whenever they're vertically integrated and combined in one company, basically, you lose transparency. So as we're trying to make headway as a country on drug pricing, they can do the accounting however they want. Well, see, it's our insurance company making a ton of money. It's not the
our
PBM.
CVS pharmacies are paying the exact same amount or receiving the same amount as your independent pharmacy is. I don't know what your problem is.
So in terms of the actual role of the PBM's role in healthcare, the vertical integration has hidden it and making it much more difficult to truly understand. Whereas, not all that long ago, they were individual companies and they were under a lot of fire. So it kind of was it was a win-win. All right, we'll partner up with you. We can keep rolling. We'll be able to hide some things and we'll keep going. So I think, again, back to basics, first thing to understand, even for me, like looking into this, I was like, why do they, there's a part of me that wonders, why do they exist? And again, it's back to what I said about the other issue, cat's out of the bag. It's hard to unwind what has ballooned into something so big. So before the 60s, medications were not covered under insurance plans. You had health insurance. It was not for medications. Medications, there was much less innovation. Relatively speaking, they were a lot cheaper. It was just a regular consumer good like any other. From the 60s onward, the innovation started to change. Pricing started to go up. Those companies grew. And along with that came, insurances, I'd like to get some insurance for these medications. Makes sense. So instead of the insurances really taking it upon themselves to figure it out, there's all these different classes. There were these companies that started PBMs that said, hey, we got you. We will handle who pays for what, how much it is. We're going to squeeze the pharmacies. We'll get these prices down. We know what stuff costs. We will take care of it. And then, so they filled a role, but in 1970, that was only for 16% of prescriptions.
Wow.
By 2000, it went to 68%. Now we're at 85%.
Yep.
So even in the last 25 years, look at the jump. The other way that PBMs really ingrained themselves in our institution of pharmacy is that in the late 80s, early 90s, we moved to real-time electronic claim submission. So that medication that you get prescribed, the answer to your exact copay that does not change. You don't get a bill later, like occasionally some of the nebulousness at a doctor's office or at a lab. You don't have that at the pharmacy level and sometimes it's bad news because you have a deductible and why are you charging me $400, but it's real time, fixed and done at that time. But that's a lot of data that needs transmitted. That's a lot of all the formularies, why they cover this one and don't cover this one. That all has to be preloaded in. I'm not a computer software guy, but all of those things have to be, managed by this company.
And that's what the PBMs do.
That's what the PBMs do. So they went from filling a small niche to the niche got a little bigger, and now you need technology. And they became like for a while, they were these technology companies, really, because that was not something that, the healthcare industry was ready to just jump on board with. And they were on the forefront of kind of forcing their way in there. So you see why they're here. See how it's ballooned.
Yep.
And then again, you start, this isn't right. Let's fix it. Let's just shut down these multi-billion-dollar companies' most profitable arm of their business. Let's just clamp on them. It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So how do you do it? I'm not saying I have those answers, but I want just so you understand maybe what's going on.
Yeah. And the primary PBM defense, what they always say is, look, we're the only ones in the position and with the power to push back on pharmaceutical companies who are the ones charging all these insane list prices. If it weren't for PBMs, nobody would push back on that price, and then people would just be in trouble. That's what they're saying. Obviously, that's not strictly speaking true, especially considering the free market would decide what the fair value for a product is. Either it's going to get paid for or it's not. And if it's not, then the price either comes down or the company goes out of business. But that's their defense. I'm trying to steel man the argument here and be nice to them as best I can.
Yeah, would pharmacies like to get paid more than they get paid? Of course. So, but at the same time, insurance companies, taxpayers as a whole, whatever you're private or public, Medicare, Medicaid, instead of paying $100 for this medication, the PBM negotiates it down to $75. They're providing some value there. Like that's how they initially started. That's the point. That's what they're going to hang their hat on. That is true.
Yeah.
What gets muddy is because they're a big business. There are times when they put so if you have 3 medications that all do pretty much the same thing, we'll say, you can have little nuances or whatever.
Sure.
They decide, not the insurance company, they decide, well, this one we're going to cover, these 2 we're not. And the person can still get it technically, but realistically they can't. They pay $600 or a $40 copay. So they've told you and your doctor basically that out of these 3, this is the one you're on. ultimately, that's typically okay. They're in the same class. They're going to work the same way. If something really goes wrong, allergy, side effects, there are mechanisms by which you can maybe get the other one covered. But point is, they decide amongst those three. How do they decide? They decide not by what's the most expensive overall, how much money do they get back?
Right.
So, it's a $600 drug. You'll kick us back $200. You'll kick us back $150. We're going with the $200 guy.
Yep.
It's that simple. And then what occurs is that money is supposed to go back to the insurer that, hey, we're doing this for you. Well, remember now the PBM is the insurer and how much of it goes back. And now that's very muddy, again, with the lack of transparency about where that money really is going to and what the point of it is. There was an example this week, being a pharmacist working in a pharmacy, Entresto is a pretty big medication. Okay. And it just went generic. And I tried 8 patients. This is literally just the last week or two.
Yeah. 8
patients, 7 of them the generic was not covered. The generic only was covered in 1 of those 8. It's been approved by the FDA. It's a valid generic. It's AB rated, substitutable by any measure, except the PBM decided they're only covering the brand. The brand is about $650-ish. The generic, our cost was below $100. It was about $80 for the bottle. So they're not paying it.
Yeah.
They're not paying for it. And why? Because they have some arrangement with Entresto that hasn't expired yet that they get a rebate back. Okay? There's no rebates on generics.
Yep.
And they also, what I saw too, is it gets a little muddy because these drug companies are so big. So yeah, we're not just talking about Entresto. You're talking about whatever else is in the portfolio of that company.
Yep.
So yeah, all right. So we've gotten pushed to the wall on Entresto. It's been out for 6 months. If you don't give us another 6 months, we're going to cut rebates on 2 of the other meds that are on your formulary. It's just crazy that that's where we are dealing with pricing.
Yeah.
And then you see what we're up against to try to start to get these numbers down. It is very difficult.
And so to bring it back, President Trump's executive order, one of the other elements of the most favored nation statement, we're calling it that, is that President Trump suggested that pharmaceutical companies should be able to sell directly to consumers, circumventing the PBMs and presumably pharmacies, I guess, as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the part that I don't get is what about insurances?
Yeah.
So I think
they'd have to get reimbursed or something.
What I would think is they would do something like, if you want to go through directly to the company, it's a non-insurance cash price. It's $100. You can go through your insurance if you want. You're back up at the 600 number, but they may pay for some of it.
Sure.
So I can't imagine that they're just going to then be able to sell it and start sending bills to insurance companies. But yeah, in this case, if you literally are selling manufacturer to patient, you're cutting out a very large business that's a wholesaler. Yep. You're cutting out every pharmacy. You're cutting out the PBMs for better or worse, and the insurance isn't involved. Those are a lot of hurdles to jump over. So if you start doing that on a large scale, I would be curious about what the true kind of fix for that would be besides just, hey, if somebody has a really high deductible plan, they don't have insurance, we're going to make these companies at least offer this extremely discounted cash price for those patients who qualify. Something like that, I think, does make sense. That would just be a way they could apply pressure. My assumption in this is they do not mean that they're just going to, right. your average everyday, Eliquis medications that you're using, Advair's, things like that you're just going to start getting from the drug company. There's too many levels there.
Not to mention, it's an executive order. You can't just...
True.
Mandate that this happens without Congress doing some things and all that. I'm curious to see how it plays out because the private market is not Medicare and Medicaid. But anyway, that's that. Let's go to the other one before we totally lose track of this. Medicare prescription drug price renegotiation for higher cost prescriptions. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is back to a little bit of government controlled pricing. Yeah. And again, this is where to me anyway, you have to try to be as circumspect about the issue as possible. A lot of people go down the road of, well, when the government starts negotiating prices, then they just do the next thing and they do the next industry. And I get that.
Yep.
On the other hand, I happen to see it because of what we do that, you have, patients coming in, they're on Medicare, they're elderly, they've got a $1,000 deductible. They've got, $800 deductible. They literally have $500 out the door before they get 1 month of one medication. So when you see sometimes the ramifications of these medications being so high, you see that there is benefit to this. So where you fall on it, I don't know. But basically, they're just saying that for Medicare, they're paying less.
Yeah,
that's it. It's that simple. They're going to pay less, and they're not just saying it to the drug companies as a whole. They're going group by group. They're having groups of medications that they're going to negotiate the prices down for Medicare patients. So that really is a massive step towards what we're talking about and what that whole executive order says. That was first done under Biden with the insulin cap.
Yeah.
So basically capped it at $35, that if you're a Medicare patient on insulin, you'll pay no more than $35 deductible. It's $35. And, again, I've seen diabetic patients that we have when they would go into the donut hole, which they've kind of phased out, but found a little bit of a way around. They're paying $800 or $1,000 in the month for their insulin because he happens to be a more severe type 1 diabetic and he's on 2 of them and he's got the latest brand. I mean, it's so, again, I try to, as much as I can, see both sides of what's going on here. Yes, the PBMs have gotten crazy in the whole situation. Yes, it's crazy that we pay so much more than other countries, but how did we get there, and how can we realistically start to pull it back? I think that the Medicare drug negotiation is a heck of a step. I think it's a really good idea.
If it's a negotiation, I'm okay with it, but I'll be direct. I'm the most free market guy I know.
Yeah, I want to hear it. Yeah, this is what we...
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like you mentioned, once you start mandating prices, there is an unintended consequence that will come about because of that. When you put a price cap, quality drops every time. And I'm actually reading a book about economics right now by one of my heroes, Dr. Thomas Sowell. And it's so funny because it's lining up with so much of this stuff. That said, as you're talking about, this is such an unbelievable tangled ball of yarn that the more I researched, the more I read all kinds of different perspectives. I read first sources. I read all kinds of things. And I just kept going, it just needs to be burned down. Like we just got to burn it to the ground and start over again because this is not working. And if you take out PBMs, well, then that means the local pharmacy has to then bill directly every single insurance company that they want to work with. And they have to have pre-negotiated all those prices on the front end. That's got to happen. If you take out, whatever, you take out insurance, you say insurance is the problem. We're going to get rid of insurance. Okay, but then aside from all of the millions of jobs that are lost in the insurance industry, what about the folks who don't prepare for the worst case scenarios? There's no easy solution to any of this stuff. And I think that's probably the thing that's most frustrating to me is the unrealistic expectation that gets set when people say, oh, this president's doing this. This president's doing this. He's going to fix it. No, he's not. He's not going to fix it. He's not going to fix it.
I think practically, you're right. I think practically speaking, you've got to take steps like the negotiate these 10 Medicare drugs. If you're okay, I
if it's a negotiation, it's a negotiation.
Yes, I think those kind of things are the only practical way. We're going to pay as low as they pay in Italy starting tomorrow for every Medicaid patient. That kind of stuff. Again, I get the big picture headline, and I get that it is unfair. And if you want to stay at the top level of the surface, I get it. But anything below, there's just so much going on there.
The other thing that I noticed as I was doing more research about this is there are no heroes. Every single level of this, as I was reading through it, I was like, wait a minute, that's really scuzzy. That's really dirty. That's really nasty. Everyone's
been pitted against each other.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
Which
it's the Spider-Man meme where everybody
they're
all pointing to one another.
That's exactly what it is. Everybody's pointing at everybody else. And the PBM is right that the medication, the pharmaceutical companies are charging insane prices. But also the pharmaceutical companies are right that the PBMs are pre-negotiating insane rebates. And they're not allowing actual competition between the pharmaceutical companies being to the consumer. The consumer doesn't get to choose, or even their doctor. It's the PBM deciding ahead of time. And the insurance companies are the PBMs. So they're not clean. And it is a nasty, gross thing. And everybody's a bad guy. And you go, well, whose hands are we cutting off? Because somebody's, but we're going to do it wrong.
So not to oversimplify this, but for a simpleton like me, this is like, my mind is swirling. So with this whole, was it MFN?
Most favored nation.
Yeah. So it means either, like you said at the outset, oh, this is great news. We should be paying what everybody else is paying. But it's bad news if the drug companies then are like, oh no, we're not even going to sell to you. So like it could be good news. It could be really bad news. It could take, well, like how long would this take?
I would think if you dropped a hammer on it tomorrow, like if it could just happen, that the drug companies, you're not going to notice the difference tomorrow. You're not, I'm not going to be able to get my medication next month. But the downside would be long-term. Then these companies drop billions and billions of dollars of profit, billions of value, and then they're less likely to aggressively try to find the next GLP-1 or the next innovation because it's not as profitable for them to do so. They don't have the money in the bank they used to.
So research and development.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I read.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's true. Now, again, it's with all these things, there's middle ground. Does that mean that all their executives need to get millions of dollars in bonuses and all the salesmen are, if they do well are making hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s? That's great for them. But when it becomes very complicated because it's not like these drug companies make a ton of money and it's like, yeah, let's pour it right back into the next cancer innovation. It's some portion of what they do. They can't do it without all that profit, but there's mess and waste and stuff everywhere.
But these are also publicly traded companies.
Absolutely.
Predominantly. They are owned by
exactly
the person who is on Medicaid, who is getting their pharmaceutical, like that person's 401k. Some of it's invested in these publicly traded companies. So them maximizing profit is good for that person. There is no simple solution to any of this. But yeah, gosh. Okay. Well, I don't know if we brought any clarity to this conversation other than holy cow, this stuff is a mess. Someday we get to talk about rebate pricing and spread pricing from PBMs because that was fun. But we won't do it today because it's insane. Anything else that we're missing out on the executive orders here?
I think we beat it up pretty good.
All right. There will be more guaranteed. And when there is, we will come back here and tell you about it. If you learned anything from this, please go share this episode with somebody that you know, somebody who needs to know this information. And frankly, this affects every American, so you all need to know this information. Give the show a thumbs up or leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. Drop us a line. Questions at askjoedimatteo.com is our email address. Questions at askjoedimatteo.com. Ask Joe DiMatteo is the website where you can find this show. You can find past episodes of the show. You can find the show that started this, the Ask the Pharmacist show. You can find all the products that we recommend that aren't pharmaceuticals and are not paid for by PBMs. We're selling them direct to you. We're cutting out the middleman.
Look at us.
Yeah, look at that. Go check us out online. Big thanks to everybody involved in making this happen. And that's it for us. Good luck. Stay away from the pharmaceutical companies.
Wow.
That's weird.
That sign off was sick.
Wow.